Welcome to the Global News Podcast here on YouTube, where we go behind the headlines to look at a story and find out more about it and why it matters. And in this episode, we're looking at the closure of primary, secondary and higher education schools in the state of Bauchi in Nigeria, where there are concerns over rising insecurity because of abductions. Well, Bauchi is the latest state to take action following recent kidnappings, including those of more than 300 children from a Roman Catholic school on Friday. Well, joining us now is our Africa correspondent, Mayeni Jones, who's in Minna in Nigeria. So, Mayeni, remind us what happened at this school on Friday.
So in the early hours of Friday, armed men stormed the grounds of the St. Mary's Catholic School in a village called Papiri. It's in Niger State. It's about 9 hours drive from Minna, the state capital where we are now. They took 315 students with them, according to the school authorities. And since then, the Christian Association of Nigeria has said that 50 of those students were able to escape. Now, that's something that's been called into question by the authorities. They say they're not aware of those 50 students, but I think it's worth mentioning for the audience that this is a village that is incredibly remote. It takes 9 hours to drive from the nearest, biggest town. The roads are terrible. You have to take a ferry to get there. So the fact that it's so remote might explain why some of the details of what happened on Friday aren't that clear.
And what about the others?
So the others are still missing, an estimated 265 students. The authorities say that they're throwing absolutely everything at this. They've got the armed forces combing the surrounding forests around the school. President Bola Tinubu, the Nigerian President, has recalled 100,000 police officers who are currently working with VIPs, very important people as security. He's called them back, saying that they now need to work on their core police duties, so ensuring security across the country. He's also asked for 30,000 new police officers to be recruited. So the authorities are really keen to make sure that these kids are brought back, and that's because mass kidnappings of children of this type really have a tendency to dominate headlines and put a lot of pressure on the government to sort out the security situation here.
Well, yes, this isn't an isolated incident, is it?
No, not at all. Just a few days before this abduction at this Catholic school, 20 schoolgirls were taken from their boarding school in the northwestern state of Kebbi. One of the staff members was unfortunately killed in that incident. We believe those girls were Muslim. And a week prior to that, people celebrating Mass, or just a few days prior to that, people celebrating Mass in the state of Kwara. 38 people there were taken and were released this past Sunday. So there's been a renewed wave of these. They kind of tend to come and go. The last mass kidnapping of this type that we'd seen before this period was over a year ago in March of 2024. So they seem to kind of come in these clusters and then they go away for a bit and then they come back.
So Mayeni, what do we know of those behind these abductions and kidnappings?
Well, at the moment, nobody's claimed responsibility for this latest set of kidnapping. The area that we're in, northwestern, north central Nigeria, when these kidnappings happen, they tend to be carried out by armed groups. They're known locally as bandits. And the reason they target schools and big groups of students is because they know that it's very emotive, that parents will put pressure on the authorities to get the kids back, that they have a higher chance of getting ransom. But it is worth saying that in the northeast of the country, there is a lot more kidnapping by Islamist insurgent groups like Boko Haram, which kidnapped the Chibok girls in 2014. So in this instance, it's not clear if the group that took those 300 students from St. Mary's School is affiliated with Boko Haram or IS or Al-Qaeda in any way, or if they're just guys that kidnapped these students hoping to get paid a hefty ransom.
And we are getting international reaction to this, aren't we?
Absolutely. The US has condemned the abduction of the 300 students. They've said that the Nigerian authorities must do everything in their power to get them back. They've called for those responsible to be brought to justice and to be detained. And Pope Leo over the weekend also issued a statement calling for the release of the students and urging the Nigerian authorities to do everything that they can to get them released. So these stories do really, because of the precedent set by the Chibok girls and how that became a a global campaign centered around the abduction of schoolgirls, girls being stopped from, continuing their education. These abductions do still have a way of galvanizing international attention around the problem of insecurity in Nigeria, which has been going on for well over a decade.
And what's it like there? Do you really feel a sense of terror amongst children and indeed parents, because this is everybody's worst nightmare?
Absolutely. I've been covering these mass kidnappings since I've been a foreign correspondent, so for going on 8 years now. And every single time when one of these happen, you get a real sense of fear from parents and a real dilemma for them, because everybody wants their kids to get an education, everybody wants them to be able to get on in life. But if the place where they're getting that education is going to be the place where they could potentially be in danger, what do? You find yourself in a very tricky situation. And we're finding once again that the people who are suffering from this are young children and young people across northern Nigeria. A lot of states now coming forward, urging schools to close down until security is restored. Nobody knows when that will be. And in the meantime, the education of all these kids is going to be disrupted.
And have you talked to any of the parents or children? I mean, what are people saying to you?
So a BBC team on the ground managed to make it to Papiri after several days of traveling. It was very intense, and they managed to speak to parents there. Those parents didn't want to be identified. There's often worries around repercussions in the community, that the criminals might come back and target parents who've spoken to the media, but they did say that they were incredibly distraught. One mother said that her only son had been taken, that it was her first child, and she was begging the authorities to get them back. There was a real sense of kind of despair from the parents, confusion, wanting more information, wanting to know when their kids are going to be returned. But the town of Papiri, very difficult to reach, and a lot of the parents finding it very frustrating to get clear information as to exactly what is happening.
Mayeni, thank you so much. And you can hear more about this story and others on the Global News Podcast. Get it wherever you get your podcasts. And if you enjoyed this episode and found it insightful, please give us a like and subscribe to us here on YouTube. And if there are other stories you'd like us to cover, tell us in the comments below. But that's it from this edition of the Global News Podcast here on YouTube.